that means a little bit later, but this meeting is being recorded, okay? So welcome to the West 32nd Avenue and East 33rd Avenue upgrades. This is over the course of multiple years, this is the 5th open house. We're in pre-final design for what we're calling the first phase of the project. And you'll hear us talk about it as the West 30th Avenue and North Star Street upgrades. Okay, so thank you for spending 90 minutes of your time. You can come and go if you need to attend to other things, but this is what you can expect for the next 90 minutes. We're going to introduce the project team. We're going to talk about signing in. We're going to go over meeting procedures and etiquette. We are going to give a project presentation. We'll have a time for question and answers, and then we'll talk about how you can stay involved and submit comments. So right now, I'd like to introduce the project team, and I'll ask Melinda to come on camera if you'd like today, Melinda. Go ahead.
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name's Melinda too. I'm the project manager, and we've been working as a team for, like Holly said, a few years now, and we're excited to get this far at a 95% design phase for phase 1, Bernard to Arctic. So hello.
And now I'm going to pass it over to Julie, who we get to see tonight. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Julie Makla, project administrator. I work with Melinda.
Sometimes Chelsea Wardwaller joins. She's the public information officer for project management and engineering over at the municipality. She's also a member of the project team. Now I'm going to have members of the CRW engineering group team introduce themselves. We'll start with Brendan.
Hi, I'm Brendan McKee. I'm with CRW Engineering. I'm working with PM&E and the rest of the CRW design team to move this project forward.
Go ahead,
Thanks.
Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt Edge. I'm project manager for CRW Engineering Group, the design team.
And then Justin, go ahead.
Justin Keene with, of course, also CRW, and I'm one of the project engineers on the project.
And then there's 2 of us working on public involvement and stakeholder engagement. It's myself, Holly Torres, and my colleague, Michelle Fairbach. She's on the line tonight as well. Okay. All right. So signing in, non-pandemic times, we'd have a sign-in sheet and you would all sign in. With this Microsoft Teams platform, I have the ability to download an attendance sheet. So we will be able to capture your attendance from me by downloading the sheet. If for some reason you think that we do not have your email address and you want us to have it, you can do one of 2 things. You can either type your email in the chat box and we will collect it and make sure you're on the mailing list. Or if you don't want your email to go in the chat box, Michelle is going to type my email in the chat box and you can send me an email that will come to my inbox privately and we will add you to the email list. Okay. But like I said, your attendance here is recorded when I download the participant list. Okay. So meeting procedures and etiquette tonight. You will have a chance to speak later, but while the team is giving the presentation, if you could just keep your microphone muted, that would be helpful. Please keep your camera turned off. That helps with the bandwidth and the speed of the meeting so that things don't get bogged down. Again, we please ask that you wait for the end of the presentation to provide any comments or questions. We'll just let the team get through that first. Please use the chat window if you have any questions during the presentation that you don't want to forget. If you just put the question in the chat box, we'll make sure you get in the queue, okay? You don't have to use the chat box though, because we will have a question and answer session at the end. And if you raise your hand, let me know you want to speak. I'll make sure you get called on and you can ask your question, have a discussion, those sorts of things. Again, keep in mind the meeting is being recorded, as is the chat. Okay? All right. Now I'm going to pass it over to Matt. Go ahead, Matt.
All right, thanks, Holly. Hi, this is Matt Edge, project manager for CRW. I'll just give you a brief overview of the project and how we got to where we are, and then I'll turn it over to Justin to talk about the details. As Holly mentioned, we started, or maybe Melinda mentioned, we started a few years ago, summer of 2017, and we've had multiple public meetings since then. We've taken the design of the project all the way from Spinard Road, all the way across Midtown to Old Stewart Highway up to 65% level, which gives us a pretty good idea of what the proposed improvements we would like them to be along that corridor. And then we broke it up into phases. So there's 4 phases along the project, and I'll show you those in a few minutes. But phase 1 is where we're talking about here today, and that includes improvements to West 30th Avenue and North Star Street, and a trail connection from North Star Street over to Arctic Boulevard, and then some interim bike improvements on West 32nd Avenue. From here, we're going to start a right-of-way acquisition phase, and then we will move into final design as we acquire the right-of-way needed for construction. We'll bid the project in spring, and we will begin construction summer of 2021. So coming up here pretty soon. Construction should just be 1 season, so should be over with by the end of 2021. So next slide, Holly. So what we're trying to do is we're constructing a corridor across Midtown Anchorage that enhances the safety and accessibility for motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists by implementing complete streets design standards as recommended by the Anchorage Vision Zero Steering Committee. And I'll talk about complete streets and Vision Zero on the next slide. But what we are doing is we're reconstructing the roadways on 30th Avenue and North Star Street. We're adding a pathway. We're adding sidewalks, pedestrian facilities, bike lanes, improving accessibility, adding landscaping, new street lights, signage, and then we're upgrading the existing storm drain and reconstructing or relocating utilities as required for those other improvements. So next slide. So complete streets are really a methodology for designing a roadway and a transportation corridor for all users. So regardless of whether or not they're pedestrians, bicyclists, people with disabilities, people driving vehicles or getting to transit stops, we want to take into account all users when we design a transportation corridor. And Vision Zero is a philosophy that we're trying to design our system so that we can get to a point where we have 0 deaths or serious injuries between bicyclists and vehicles and pedestrians and vehicles. So that's what's kind of driving the overall focus of this project. Next slide. So why did we pick this corridor? It's you know, as opposed to others. So right now there's a couple of major transportation corridors for pedestrians and bicyclists across Midtown on Benson Boulevard and on 36th Avenue. Both of those corridors have high vehicle speeds, high vehicle volumes. And as you can see on this figure, they also have high crash rates between bicyclists and pedestrians and vehicles. So our corridor along 36th Avenue along 32nd Avenue and then over to 30th Avenue is a corridor that splits the difference between Benson Boulevard and 36, but it includes lower vehicle speeds, lower vehicle volumes. It also has signals at all the major intersections, so it creates a corridor where people can get across those major intersections more easily. So our goal is to make this the primary route for pedestrians and bicyclists across Midtown. So next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, we have designed through 65% level or complete roadway improvements all the way from Spinard Road to Old Stewart Highway across the entire Midtown Anchorage. That cost of those improvements are significant enough where we have to break it up into phases for construction. So we broke it into 4 different phases. Phase 1 is what we're talking about here today, and that includes the red box on the left-hand side of the screen, West 30th Avenue, North Star Street. There's a pathway right where that West 32nd Avenue text is. There's no existing roadway there. And then interim improvements from Arctic Boulevard to C Street that'll include painted bike lanes and new signage along the roadway. So phase 2 of the project is actually the blue box that extends from C Street to Denali and includes Calais Drive and a portion of West 32nd Avenue, a new roundabout at Walmart driveway. And then phase 3 includes Denali Street to Old Seward Highway and 34th Avenue and a new pathway between 34th and 36th. And then phase 4 will jump back and reconstruct 32nd Avenue between Arctic Boulevard and C Street. So that overview, I'll turn it over to Justin to talk about the project specifics and our proposed improvements.
All right. Well, thank you, Matt. My name is Justin Keene, and I'm one of the project engineers on this project. Also work for CRW Engineering Group. And first off, I'm going to talk about the existing project area conditions along West 30th Avenue and North Star Street. The right-of-way width, which is owned and operated, and the area that the municipality is able to upgrade, is 45 feet, so a pretty narrow corridor along West 30th Avenue, and 30 feet along North Star Street. Posted speed limit along both streets is 20 miles per hour. Traffic volumes along West 30th Avenue, 1,080 vehicles per day, and 85th percentile speed is 26 to 28 miles per hour. Along North Star Street, traffic volumes are 330 vehicles per day, and 85th percentile speed is 23 to 27 miles per hour. This area has high pedestrian traffic along the corridor, as well as a ASD bus stop along West 30th Avenue near North Star Street, where there's really no place for the kids to really stand and wait for the bus right now. Moving on to the proposed improvements. So this is a plan view showing the proposed improvements from Spenard Road to Arctic Boulevard. And this figure might be a little overwhelming with all the different colors. We've got a legend here to kind of depict all the proposed improvements. I won't hit on all the items, but I'll try to highlight most of the significant ones, and then the slides following this slide, I'll show a cross section of each of the main roadways here. So the proposed improvements, as Matt mentioned, extend from Spenard Road along West 30th Avenue all the way down to Arctic Boulevard, and then along North Star Street down to 32nd Avenue. And this is a full roadway reconstruction project. So we're going to go in and we're going to replace the structural section below the asphalt. We're actually putting in insulation to resist some frost differential movement. And then we'll also be putting in brand new AC pavement, as well as new curb and gutter along both West 30th and North Star Street. The curb and gutter will be barrier type curb and gutter. Focusing on some of the surface improvements along West 30th Avenue, we're going to be installing 5-foot attached sidewalks on both sides of the road. So both on the north and the south side of the road, all the way down to Arctic Boulevard. From Spenard to North Star Street, we'll also be installing on-street striped bike lanes. And the preferred route for bikers is going to be from these on-street bike lanes down along a proposed 8-foot pathway along the east side of North Star Street. That pathway is going to transition from 8-foot wide to 10-foot wide, and it'll travel all the way out to Arctic Boulevard. In Arctic Boulevard, we'll be installing new curb ramps as well as a pedestrian refuge island and some crosswalk markings to provide a real safe crossing to get you across Arctic Boulevard. The other items to note on this figure is the proposed driveway reconstruction. So this is shown in this blue kind of angled striped hatching. And this is the estimated limits of our driveway reconstruction for all the various parcels. So you can kind of see those are highlighted all along the roadway. And basically what we need to do is we're changing the road grades along 30th Avenue. So we need to tie the existing driveway into the proposed roadway. Other elements along or on this figure include proposed storm drain. So we'll be replacing the existing storm drain that starts up at the West 30th and North Star Street intersection, putting in new storm drain pipe and structures and improving the drainage and grades out there. And we'll be connecting into an existing storm drain system down on West 32nd Avenue. We'll be providing also, like Matt was mentioning, roadway luminaires along West 30th Avenue. These will be installed on the south side of the road. The existing overhead utility lines and poles on the north side are going to have to remain in place. So all the light poles on West 30th Avenue will be on the south side, and we'll install those all the way down to Arctic Boulevard. We'll also be installing new roadway lights on the east side of North Star Street. And then along the pathway, we'll be installing pedestrian style pathway luminaires. So fully illuminated corridor. Other item to note, we'll be installing a proposed retaining wall. This will be installed along the east side of North Star Street. That's going to be attached to the back side of our pathway, and it's going to allow us to get an easement on AWW's property, but also not affect their on-site parking too much. Last thing I'd like to note on here is we've got the proposed temporary construction permits and easements shown. And those are what you see here, basically on almost every parcel where we're going to need our contractor to get on your property and do some reconstructing your driveway or some slope matching. So I think that pretty much covers it. There is a lot of information to see here. So the entire presentation is going to be, actually it's already on the website. So feel free to zoom in and kind of dissect this a little bit more, and feel free to ask us any questions that you might have once you look at it in more detail. So here's a cross section of basically the West 30th Avenue facing east, and it's right to the west of the North Star Street intersection. And it shows basically the kind of different cross sections we're going to be providing along 30th Avenue. From Spenard Road to North Star Street, we'll be installing these 10-foot vehicle lanes with 4-foot wide bike lanes on both sides of the road. From North Star Street, so from this intersection down to Arctic Boulevard, we'll be eliminating the bike lanes and just installing 11.5-foot wide vehicle lanes with no shoulders. And then, of course, along both sections, from Spenard all the way down to Arctic, we'll be installing proposed 5-foot sidewalks on both sides of the road. They'll be attached right to the back of the curb. And then we'll be putting in barrier curb and gutter. So basically, barrier curb and gutter is a type of curb and gutter that doesn't allow vehicles to easily travel over the curb. So at the driveways, we'll be putting in curb cut type curb, so it'll be a smooth ride. But otherwise, the barrier curb definitely protects the pedestrian more so than a rolled type curb and gutter. We'll also be installing the roadway lights all along this corridor, as previously mentioned, and the posted speed will be 25 miles per hour. And due to all us using basically the majority of this 45-foot existing right-of-way, there'll be no on-street parking allowed. This section shows North Star Street facing south, and along North Star Street, we're going to be putting in 10-foot vehicle lanes and an 8-foot attached pathway. And the 8-foot pathway is going to allow two-way traffic for pedestrians and bikes. And that'll just be installed only on the west side here. And similar to West 30th, we're going to be installing barrier curb and gutter. And then, of course, we're putting in the roadway lights as well. We don't have a graphic shown, but from West 30th, 2nd Avenue to Arctic Boulevard, that's where we're going to have that new 10-foot wide pathway, including the pathway lighting to extend from West 32nd Avenue to Arctic Boulevard to provide that safe route from Spenard Road all the way to Arctic Boulevard. We're also going to be installing these cool project branding banners that are going to be installed on the roadway lights as well as on the pedestrian lights. And our landscape architect, Bettesworth North, came up with these cool designs. These will be hopefully incorporated into future phases as well to kind of provide that consistent corridor all the way from Spenard to Old Seward Highway. So it should look really cool out there. So as Matt mentioned, we also have some inter-rim signing and striping improvements, and those are going to be extending from Arctic Boulevard all the way down to C Street. Here I'm just showing a section of that portion of the project. This is Arctic Boulevard down to Dawson Street, and along both all the way from Arctic down to C Street, we'll be doing striping on the roadway, so new centerline striping as well as bike lane striping. The vehicle lanes will be 11-foot wide, and the bike lanes will be 5-foot wide. And there's going to be no on-street parking allowed. And I'll just flip to this next slide, and you can see the bike lanes are going to start and stop kind of right as you get to the C Street intersection. And of course, as Matt also mentioned, the future roadway upgrades, so a full reconstruction, including new sidewalks and upgraded bike facilities, will be included in phase 4 of the overall project. So we do have more information available online, and we recently published our 95% complete plans and specifications, and those can be found on the project website, www.32nd33upgrades.com, under project documents and other resources tab. And since we are at kind of a pre-final 95%, they are still subject to change. We're actually going through our agency review right now, so there'll likely be some tweaks here and there just to get us to the final design. And then after bid, once we get a contractor on board, we will put on the project website our conform construction set, so you'll be able to view those to really get into the details if you'd like. The plans are organized based upon the type of information being provided on each sheet. The best way to kind of navigate through the plan set is just to look on the index and kind of drill into whether you want to look at your demolition sheets, or whether you want to look at roadway plan and profile sheets, or maybe you're interested in what the storm drain looks like. Please review the project plans, and we are available to take phone calls or email questions, and we're happy to talk more about any questions, concerns, or comments you might have once you take a look at those detailed documents on our website. So the next step is easement acquisition. So residents along West 30th Avenue and North Star Street will be contacted by Traver Land Services, and they are handling the acquisition negotiations, and they're under contract with the municipality of Anchorage, and they're going to start beginning the easement acquisition process. And some of the requested easements are permanent, whereas many are temporary and only last through construction, just enough to allow the contractor to get on property and construct those driveways or those other items. And then that temporary easement just goes away after construction. The project goal is to have all easements acquired by mid-December 2020, and that will line ourselves up good for trying to bid the project. The project schedule right now calls for bids to be opened in mid to late March 2021. And once we open the bids, get a contractor on board, then we'll be ready to construct the project. And there'll be a pre-construction public meeting with the Municipality of Anchorage inspector and the contractor and the residents to make sure everybody understands some of the disruptions, as well as who the owners can contact if they have any concerns or questions during construction. And like Matt said, the project should be constructed in one season. The landscaping improvements often likely carry over to the following season just to avoid planting in cold weather if they end up being a little bit late with installing those features. And all the residents and people in the project area will be provided contact information for the project inspector as well as the contractor prior to construction. So they'll always have somebody out there in the field to contact. We, of course, will always be available too if need be during construction, if you need to get a hold of us for any questions. Speaking of questions, I think this is the time where we're going to open up.
Yeah. Okay, so we had one question pop up in the chat box from Thomas, and you'll probably want to go back to a section that shows the North Star Street. I'm going to ask the question, Thomas, and then I'll let you follow up if you have more, if you want to engage a little bit more. But the question is, why does the bike lane stop on 30th Avenue as it approaches Arctic? What happens to the bike lane?
Why does the... Sorry. Shoot. Hold on, bear with me here. Okay. Can you read that question one more time, Holly?
It was for that slide right there in regards to the bike lane and how it stops there and doesn't seem to actually lead to anything.
Yeah, so the intent is, the safest bike corridor that we determined was not going down Arctic and actually crossing there south at North Star Street and taking the pathway down to the new pathway connection down to, let me get back here. There we go. Yeah, so taking the pathway down and then safely crossing at Arctic here and continuing to the east. Taking the bike lanes all the way to Arctic, we did look at that. A couple challenges with that. Number one, we're needing a 3-foot easement all along the south side for all these parcels, and to get a 3-foot easement on AWW's property was going to be challenging due to some conflicts with their existing parking infrastructure. There's also some pretty big challenges with site distance issues if we were to try to
that's right here.
cross Arctic Boulevard at 30th Avenue. So because of those reasons, the preferred bike route is, down North Star Street. If a biker really wanted to not get on the pathway, he could certainly just take North Star Street down, the roadway. It's pretty low volume traffic, so that could be an option. Yeah, so we definitely considered extending them all the way to the intersection, but it wasn't the preferred route.
Do you have any follow-up, Thomas?
No, I mean, I get it. It just feels like it's you're just kind of indirectly zigzagging the biker around, but that's fine. When I'm on a bike commuting, I'm looking at getting the quickest way and the most direct way. So.
Thank you. All right, Donovan has his hand up. Go ahead, Donovan.
Yeah, regarding how that bike lane ends there in Thomas's comment, is there proposed, has signage looked into bikers may use full lane, since we do know that cyclists will be going the straightforward route to their destination, which could be just immediately on the east side of this road here. So if their bike lane just ends, and then we have a small section of sidewalk before another approach, and then another section of sidewalk and another approach. So we're definitely going to have cyclists needing to use that lane. Will signage be in place to say cyclists may use full lane to encourage drivers' appropriate behavior?
We do not have that currently in the plans, but that's something that we could certainly see if traffic would be agreeable to us adding that. I don't think it would hurt whatsoever to pose that question and try to facilitate that.
Okay. And I will. This is Matt with CRW. I will mention that the traffic department has generally frowned upon that particular sign that bikes may use full line, or bikes may use full lane, because bicyclists are allowed to use the lane everywhere. And so there is a concern where using that particular sign would indicate to motorists that elsewhere in Anchorage, bicyclists aren't supposed to be using the vehicle lane. So so that's been one thing on other projects that they've pushed back a little bit. But yeah, like Justin said, you know, the connection there is being driven by trying to get across Arctic Boulevard. At the West 30th intersection, there's issues with the vehicles queuing up at the light and making it difficult to cross there, and then the shoulder and sidewalk widths are a little challenging in there as well. So, and then at Arctic Boulevard, the pathway, there will be a depression in the curb right as the pathway comes out on Arctic Boulevard. So bicyclists don't have to go down to the pedestrian refuge island to get across there.
Okay, thank you, Matt. We're going to go to Michelle first, and then maybe Donovan again. Go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, I'm sorry I had to join late, so I'm sorry if I missed anything that would help. But I live on 30th, and my understanding, if I remember the signs right, which sometimes your mind just blanks on something you see every day, is that our speed limit is 20 miles per hour right now. And when I looked through the documents, it looked like the signage said 25 miles an hour. Am I wrong about that, or are they upping the speed limit now that there's sidewalks, or what's the story?
Yeah, so that was a request made by traffic to up the speed to 25 miles per hour because the existing 85th percentile speeds are in that range currently. They really are, yeah, so existing, traffic 85th percentile speed is around 26 to 28 miles per hour. They typically, I've been on other projects as well where, the existing speed limit's 20 miles per hour and they want to get it up to 25 to just be more realistic with what people are actually traveling along the corridor. There's not very many 20 mile per hour roadways that exist out there for a facility like this where there's a lot of traffic volume. I don't know if that's the best response. Matt, do you have any other feedback as to why they wanted that change?
No, I think it's just to be consistent with the general philosophy in Anchorage that 25 mile an hour is appropriate for local roads, which is what 30th Avenue is designated. There's been past discussion that if you post a speed limit, too low on a roadway project, that it's kind of considered a speed trap type of situation where you may not be able to enforce it correctly. So the traffic department determined that 25 mile an hour was appropriate for this road. So that's why we changed the speed limit.
All right. Well, I'm certainly interested in traffic going slower than it does, because I feel like much traffic speeds quite a bit, especially the cut through, people just using it to get from Arctic to Spenard. And I'm hoping that the improvements de facto lower the speed limit, because we all know big wide roads like it is encourage people to speed. But if I read the plans right, only the bike lanes will go into the existing roadway. And does kind of soft lines like that help slow traffic down, or only when you actually are able to narrow the roadway?
So this is Matt again. So anything you could do to create friction for drivers helps reduce the roadway speeds. Curb and gutter, striping. If you make the lanes feel narrower, even landscaping along the side of this. What's that?
Sorry, joke. Caltrops.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So but anything you can do. I mean, having parked cars along the roadway oftentimes helps reduce speeds too. So definitely, there's always a trade-off, and we don't want people to speed along the corridor. If speeding becomes an issue in the future, there's a program that the city has to install speed reduction measures, like speed humps and things like that. We don't typically like to do that with non-motorized facilities, and then they also, as a detrimental effect of reducing the ability for emergency responders to get through, it slows them down and things like that. So they have a process that they go through, they measure their speeds, and then they can determine whether or not the measures to implement on a roadway would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move back to Donovan and then Thomas. Donovan, you had your hand up again. Do you have another question?
So I'd just like to say I'm with Bike Anchorage, and looking at some of the distances here in the raised speed limit is something that's quite concerning to us as representatives of cyclists here in Anchorage, or potential bikers. And just kind of knowing from some of the NACTO designs standards that that not a lot of cyclists or potential cyclists will feel comfortable with just painted lanes on 25 mile an hour posted speed limits. We're kind of concerned about how the widths of the road might be a little bit wider than maybe possibly designed, and waiting for the speeding to happen before implementing. Because this is probably one of the best potentials for having a low stress corridor for people like kids, parents, and everything like that. And reducing speed now would reduce traffic in this area. And so are there any other traffic and speed reducing means getting put in now, or are we just waiting for it to potentially happen with new upgraded facilities?
So this is Matt again. So other than the striping along the roadway and the curb, there aren't any specific traffic calming measures along the roadway. I don't know that posted speed limits have been, indicate the actual speeds that are driven along the roadway. It's more about the geometry and the sight distance, which is a straight stretch of road. So the best things we have to really indicate what we think future speeds will be are existing vehicle speeds along the roadway, because we're not changing too much of that. So 85th percentile speed means that 85% of the folks along the roadway are driving less than that, so 26 to 28 miles an hour. So that's where people are driving, or speed people are driving now. With regard to trying to slow that down further, that there's been no specific design features that have been incorporated to try to do that. And I'm not sure, we can bring it up with the traffic department, just like we can bring the posted speed limit again with them, but there's only so much that the design team can do. We have to get permission from the MOA traffic department to do certain things, which both the speed limit and traffic calming measures are some of those things.
Okay, so let's move on to snow and snow maintenance. And Thomas, I'm gonna kick it to you to ask your question. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question was in regards to what's the plan for snow removal, knowing that all these roads inside of the entire corridor are poorly maintained by the municipality in terms of snow removal. I know it may help that there is an on-street parking being removed, so that's kind of part of the challenge, but what is that long-term kind of view around snow removal in the area, especially when we're talking about the traffic calming is striped lanes, and you can't see those striped lanes for about 4 to 6 months out of the year, depending on snowfall. So would just love any thoughts around what's the plan for snow removal in the area.
Okay, and go ahead, Matt.
Okay, so yeah, and that's something that we evaluated closely in the design study report. We actually looked at the difference in overall cost from acquiring additional property along the entire corridor, moving more utilities to try to provide space for that. And what it comes down to is just, the snow will be plowed and it'll temporarily be in those bike lanes until street maintenance can come through and haul it off. So the snow removal or snow maintenance on the corridor will be hauling it as they can get to it. Now the municipality has a whole ranking system on roads that they prioritize snow removal on. So street maintenance is aware of this project, but I'm not exactly sure where it's ranked or where it will be ranked after construction. So I don't know how quickly they'll get that snow hauled off. But the intent is to have a clear corridor through the summer and winter months.
I'm talking on mute the whole time. Thank you so much, Thomas. Okay, so at this point, I don't have anyone else in the queue. But I know you still have questions, because every time I say that we don't have any more questions, somebody thinks of one. So are there any more questions or comments? Donovan, I knew it. See? Go ahead, Donovan.
Hey, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I was wondering if, since this is going to be the safe route for cyclists to take, we're probably going to see a large uptick in cyclist usage. Has any design features or ideas been used to reduce traffic volume in the area to safely accommodate this influx of cyclists? Specifically, has the project considered a mode filter at the north side of North Star to allow for bicycle permeability only? Maybe a gate for emergency vehicles? So now that we're upgrading this road, which was a 330 ADT, it seems to be a very low used road, and just, having it be a practically nearly pedestrian and non-motorized road only at that point would be really inviting to cyclists and comfortable for all user levels.
Matt, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So we did evaluate a bunch of options. We did not include an evaluation of shutting North Star down to motorized traffic. We looked at one-way options, and as you seem to kind of gather, that the concerns of a lot of that is emergency vehicle access through there. And so I think that the evaluation process for bike and ped facilities is very numbers driven with regard to a lot of the measures that are implemented. For instance, we're going to put conduit and infrastructure under Arctic Boulevard for a rectangular rapid flashing beacon potentially in the future there, but we can't justify putting it in until we actually have the numbers of pedestrians and bicyclists crossing that intersection to meet the standard requirements. So with regard to shutting down North Star Street, I can imagine maybe in the future as volumes increase, it could be something that could be considered. But at this point where we don't have those actual numbers to justify shutting that down, it's not something that the project has really pursued. So, but it's a good idea. I think I would support it personally.
So Donovan, this is Melinda. Hi. I like the word, the uptick, that excites all of us here, because when we're looking at which phase to start on first, part of the idea is the importance of looking at connectivity. Spinard Road just had completed their phase and making a lot of ped and bike and non-motorist improvements, and so having this phase connect with Spinard Road. And the idea was, okay, this is the opening up the gate of using the corridor. That section along 32nd Avenue already has a feeling of a low stress corridor. So it will be interesting to see, what are the numbers of non-motorized usage and what are the patterns of usage. Something that the traffic calming program always shares is, once they see a pattern and the public comes forward and identifies a problem, we can study it further from the municipality and look if there's any traffic calming features or adjustments we need to make in the corridor. But anyways, I just thought I'd share that. I think that was, the intent of this being our primary phase, just to kind of open up that connectivity of using this east-west midtown corridor. So I'm very eager, as well as our whole project team and the community, to see how this improvement will enhance this road corridor for all users and the residents and businesses, and see how it's used, and study it as we know more. So anyways, thought I'd just share that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Anyone? Okay. Justin, thank you. Okay, so I guess what I just want to say is as the projects get, especially this first phase, as the project gets closer to construction, there's more and more details, and there's a lot to digest, right? So if you have it in you, please spend the time that you need on the website, and we're here to answer any more questions that you have. We know that as we get closer to construction, the documents get a little bit harder to read, but a lot of times individual property owners at this time have more specific questions. We just want you to know that as you dive in, as you need to the information, we're here to answer those questions, okay? Everything you said tonight has been documented, all your comments, whether it was verbally to us or in the chat. We're documenting all your comments as part of the project record. Again, the easiest way for you to get in touch is to email or call me directly. There's my email. And if you go to the project website, my direct phone number is there. You can call or email anytime. All project documents and meeting materials will be available on the project website. If for some reason you have neighbors or colleagues who weren't able to participate tonight, we're recording this meeting and it will be available for people to watch at a later date on your own time. Also, we developed a self-guided virtual public meeting so that, again, you can participate in a similar public meeting on your own time. And that will all be available on the project website tomorrow. Okay. Any final questions? None? I knew it. Okay, Donovan.
Hi
One
there.
last. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Another area of kind of interest is the Arctic crossing. I'm sure everyone's been looking at this one quite a bit. I know that there's utility right where the pathway intersects Arctic. It looks like we have a small stop sign there for people to stop before they enter the sidewalk. And there's a very small radius turn there before entering about a 5-foot sidewalk. I was wondering what the design vehicle is for that radius. Is that going to be something that accommodates larger cycles? And is it the utility area that's stopping proposing a larger radius turn in this area, and maybe a bit more of storage area for this east-west crossing? Because, you know, if we have a buildup here, a buildup on the sidewalk of cyclists coming in, it seems like a very awkward crossing if you have someone with a large bike or a cargo bike trying to make this radius turn. I'm just kind of wondering if they're using bike design, what kind of design vehicles they're using to justify that radius.
That's a great question, especially from somebody who's maybe not a great bike handler.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Justin or Matt, either one. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, so if you're talking, I think maybe this radius right here.
Correct.
Yeah, so we do not have, so there is quite a few utilities in that area, and we do not have an easement or anything to extend across property. I think Matt mentioned, you know, this is going to be at grade. So, you know, the thought would be if you're a comfortable biker, you don't necessarily need to go down to the PED refuge island and could just queue up behind the sidewalk. And then for making the maneuver, you know, from the south, you could enter in from the curb ramp. And then I guess coming in from the south on Arctic, I'm sorry, that was the north. On the south on Arctic, you know, you could go past the curb ramp and then just go right into the trail. And then I guess, you know, queued up bikers would have to kind of sit behind the pathway here. Yeah, I think there's existing utilities and just easement challenges that that kind of precluded us from making that a big return radius there.
Yeah, or widening the sidewalk between the pathway and the crosswalk.
Yeah, exactly. We're butted right up against the property line, and we've just got so many easements that we need to get on this project. It was, you know, kind of trying to rein in some of those impacts to private property and trying to get those easements. But, you know, who knows? Maybe that can be something, you know, if we, during phase 4, I guess, when we go to reconstruct this, maybe there's some more ability to widen some of these facilities a little bit more, but.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I was looking at, the utilities there. I was reckoning that was probably the cause for it, but making sure it was kind of considered.
Sure.
Yeah, so we do have, we will be submitting comments. We have some plan sets with quite a few markups on them. to submit ideas and preferences for cyclists in the area. One thing I was interested in communicating, just because it was an interesting idea, but right in this same intersection here, as we have left turning cars coming from the east, going west and turning south, we have that two-way turning lane in the center there. So as cars make their left turn, there's potential that they'll be parking in that two-way turning lane, waiting for a gap in traffic, maybe. And just knowing that those people are going to be looking over their right shoulders, waiting for that clearing in traffic, directly north of a pedestrian crossing area. And I'm just kind of hoping that that scenario is kind of considered, and if there's any kind of design features that we could add, that could be added to somehow prevent that from happening, because I could see that being somewhat potentially hazardous for pedestrians.
So that I'm a little confused. So the are you talking about people coming on southbound vehicles on Arctic Boulevard, waiting in the center left turn lane to make a left-hand turn onto 32nd Avenue?
No. So if someone's heading westbound on 32nd and then they come to Arctic and they're making a southbound turn, and there's potentially traffic, they'll probably hop into that two-way turning lane to seek refuge. Well, while they're waiting in that two-way turning lane, while traffic's coming and then there's a break, they're going to be looking over their right shoulder behind them. And during that time, a pedestrian may have queued up and started walking into their path, into the pathway, while, and then we have someone accelerating into the traffic lane. And I know that there's possible design features that could be added to maybe that two-way turning lane area to maybe prevent people from candles. I know probably wouldn't last very long, but something of that sort to just make it not quite an occupied zone by vehicles or occupiable zone.
Yeah, and that's actually an illegal maneuver for somebody to pull into a two-way left turn lane in order to wait for traffic to come forward. So the thing would be to eliminate the striping across the intersection and just turn it into a left turn lane at Arctic Boulevard.
Yeah, just
putting bollards or candles in there. I mean, it's always something that street maintenance, shoots down, because they're going to take it out the first time it snows.
Absolutely.
If you've got suggestions, we can definitely look at them.
Yeah. Just something I saw is I'm usually a vulnerable roadway user myself, traveling in Anchorage, and these are the things that I've learned to look out for as someone who's making their way around town in sometimes less than hospitable traffic environment.
Right.
Yeah.
Understood. And that's the whole point of putting that pedestrian refuge island in there is to get the shorter crossing distances and to provide a little bit of a protected area for pedestrians as they cross right now. So
Brendan, did you have anything to add?
I was going to say we could definitely look at something that's close to at grade, maybe some type of pattern concrete median that helps define that as an area we don't want cars in, but would still allow snow removal and maintenance without taking out candles or fiberglass posts or anything. There might be some other options we could look at there.
Yeah, perfect. Any kind of visual delineation, it might not prevent all people from doing it, but it might prevent half. Who knows? And that might be the half that makes the deal. Cool. Thank you.
Okay. The team appreciates the detailed comments very much, and we'd love it if you'd write them down, Bike Anchorage. I think that's great. So thank you for doing that. Okay, people are starting to log off. So I think I'm going to just say thank you to everyone for for participating. And if you need us, go to the website. You know how to find us. Okay. I think I'm just going to let Melinda have the final word. Do you have anything else you'd like to say, Melinda?
Again, another successful virtual meeting. We're all practicing and getting more used to this format. I kind of miss seeing everybody, but you know, hopefully someday soon we'll be in a forum where we can connect and see each other face to face. But in the meantime, we just want to keep things moving and offer this way of meeting and sharing and letting you know where we're at and hear from you if you have good, whatever, hear from you and see what your questions and concerns are and just keep everybody up to date on where we're at. So thanks for joining us today. And thank you, Holly and CRW, for delivering such a great presentation and facilitating this meeting. Again, as Justin and Holly and Matt said, just let us know, and if you have any comments or questions, and we'll be happy to address those. And even if you want us to meet out on site, you know, we've done that, and I know a couple of you have met various of our team members, and we'll continue to engage and just contact us. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.